of you traveling on the cruise ship, so you're coming from Juneau, you're heading to Juneau.
From
You were there yesterday?
Not all of us.
Lovely. Yes, I know, traveling from all over here. I'd just like to ask, I myself am from Juneau originally. I'm actually a third-generation Alaskan, very proud to say so. I'm thrilled that your folks are traveling this way on the cruise ship and not the other way around.
Why?
Because my folks, they think I'm up here peddling t-shirts. So absolutely, all right, sweethearts. No, of course, they're very proud here. Welcome, my lovely little latecomers. Hi there, sweethearts in the back. Where are you folks traveling from? Oklahoma. California, fabulous. Little show of hands, first timers, where are you at? First time here in Alaska? Okay, wonderful. Wow, whole group full of virgins. Well, welcome on in here. Folks, a lovely lady helping you get nice and gussied up this morning. This is my gorgeous associate, Madam Rosie Peace. She's known for her enormous heart here in Skagway, folks. If you didn't hear me already, my name is Madam Trixie Turner. I will be your personal horse-storian this morning, all right, folks? As we do disembark this lovely room, oh, we got a couple little latecomers there. Now, folks, I don't mind a latecomer, as long as they come eventually. That's what I'm really interested in here.
The sooner the better.
That's right, I like your style, madam. If you're looking for work, you let us know, okay? Oh, folks, I'm always so happy that you folks are traveling all the way here to Skagway. Skagway, truly, it's the garden city of all of the southeast area here. We're very proud to have it. Folks, this lovely room that you're currently standing in, this is actually known as our Bombay room. This is a new addition to the building. This room was built way, way back in the very historic year of 2002. So, not a lot of history down here, folks. But as promised, everything that you're about to see up this last little staircase to paradise, everything on the opposite side of the horniest wall in all of Alaska. This is going to be the original section of the building, folks. So just a couple of quick little housekeeping rules before we can head into the museum. First and foremost, got a couple more latecomers down there, folks. First and foremost, of course, feel free, you can take, of course, as many photographs, videos, documentation as you like. We highly encourage that kind of thing here. But I just ask you to please make sure the flashes on all those cameras and videos are turned off. Everything in the museum is very light sensitive, so we wouldn't want to damage those beautiful original Klondike historic artifacts. There's a couple original Klondike historic artifacts in this very room, in fact. Starting with this beautiful original roulette wheel. This was owned by a great-great-great-grandfather of one of our very own here at the Red Onion. He used to work and live here in Skagway, took his fortunes from the rigged roulette wheel, was able to buy property down in Washington, folks. I did mention it now, of course, it belongs to the great-great-great-granddaughter. The granddaughter actually worked here at the Red Onion. One of our madams, her name was Madam Chantel, your wife. And for the right price, she wouldn't, folks. You can also see that as we make our way up this last little staircase to paradise, feel free, look at as much of the history as you like. But note that the Red Onion is a very strict look, do not touch establishment. So please do keep your hands off the artifacts, the wallpaper, the tour guides. Services have changed since 1898, folks. Looking at you, sir. Enjoy yourself, but you know, don't feel me, folks. And of course, that being said, there's one more final artifact in this very room that you're more than welcome to flash all you'd like. And that would be this red lantern right here. I don't know what you folks were thinking. Folks, this beautiful original red lantern is one of two. It used to hang on the front of our building back in 1898. So as you can see, it would have served as a glorious, shining beacon of hope for all those dirty, stinky, thirsty gold miners, folks. Letting them know that what we served upstairs, well, it was a little bit more exciting than just liquor. And as you can see, after over 120 years, she's still turned on to this day. And isn't that lucky for all you sweethearts? What do you say? You ready to go upstairs and do it?
Yeah.
Just the tour, that is. Don't get ahead of yourselves. Wave goodbye to Madam Rosie down here and follow me this way, folks.
Enjoy the climax of your day with Madam Trixie Turner, ladies and gentlemen.
For free, anyway. Wow, so quite a long flight there, all the way from Australia. Are you folks traveling anywhere else in the States while you're here?
Just on the road to us, the Rocky Mountain there, and like Louise and all that, and then we came back to Vancouver and then got onto the cruise, so 7 days.
Oh, that's lovely. Folks, do welcome on in here. Feel free to kind of fill in the gaps. It is a brothel after all, folks. I know many of you have probably already seen the sign above my head, right? Beware, pickpockets, loose women. Don't worry, though. Here in Skagway, we actually consider that a power couple. So you're in like minds, folks. Welcome on in. Feel free to kind of cuddle up on in here. Got a couple more little latecomers moving on in there, folks. This is a lovely large group this morning, which honestly is great because I do my best work for an audience. Folks, do welcome on in here. As promised, everything that you now see around you, from the floorboards you're standing on to the wallpaper, this is all original to our building. The building itself, the Red Onion, we were first built in 1897. We were open one short year later as a functioning saloon and as a brothel. At that time, the population of Skagway was two large categories. You were either one of the 15,000 dirty, stinky gold miners, or you were one of the nearly 300 working women. I don't know about you ladies, but that's the kind of math that makes me exhausted just thinking about it. But many of those single working class women, they'd actually seek out the Red Onion. We had earned ourselves the nickname, the classiest brothel in Skagway. And there was 10 in total, so we actually wore that with quite a badge of honor here. You can imagine the men downstairs looking for time with one of the girls upstairs. Well, he'd belly up to the exact same bar. It's still in place down there. You'd also seen the exact same two diamond mirrors behind our bartenders, the same floorboards downstairs. And behind the bartender, you would note a row of 10 lovely little rag dolls. Now the rag dolls, they were made to replicate the 10 live dolls living and working upstairs. You would gesture to the bartender which one you fancied, based on your own personal preferences, hair color, eye color. Now of course the bartender, he would then pick up the little rag doll and he would flip it over on its backside. This was an indication to everyone downstairs that that doll, well, she was going to be very busy. Busy for the next 15 minutes. The gentlemen are looking confused. Sweethearts, do you not know what to do in the 12 minutes? Well, don't worry, we're great communicators. We'll find something spicy to talk about, I'm sure. From there, you'd make your way up a steep, ladder-like staircase. You'd then be greeted in the hallway by the bouncer. Folks, if you cast your eyes at the ceiling in this room, please note the many rows of nails. They do indicate where the walls in this brothel once stood. You're currently standing about half of the original hallway and 2 original dolls' crib rooms. So of course, once you met the bouncer, he'd lead you down the hallway to the doll's door that you had chosen. You then, of course, would knock on the door. The door would swing open, and the very first rule of prostitution comes into play. Does anyone know what this rule might be?
Pay.
You did look familiar. Welcome back! Oh my gosh, I love a returning customer! Yes, he knows exactly how it's done, folks. Payment up front. You'd hand her a whopping $5 in the form of gold, rock-like nuggets. This was a currency here in Skagway back in 1898. Now, after you handed her the cash, you'd have those 15 minutes together. And then once the 15 minutes were over, the bouncer would return. He'd knock on the door. He'd lead you back down that staircase. Now, the bartender downstairs would be able to see that satisfied customer. However, before he propped the little rag doll back up at attention, he'd actually wait to hear one more particular sound. The sound was coming from a very small hole in the girls' floorboards. Each one of these 10 crib rooms, not that sound in particular, I don't think there. Be careful, honey, don't go falling for me just yet, all right? Folks, these beautiful crib rooms, each and every one had their very own distinct money hole. The girls would be able to drop the gold down the hole. Connected to each one was a series of copper tubing, making its way back downstairs to an individual safety deposit box. So once the bartender heard the clinking of the gold against the copper, well then he would know the transaction upstairs had come to a close. He then would prop that rag doll back at attention, once again, open for business. Now folks, while these are a lovely visual aid, unfortunately not the original rag dolls. Those rag dolls have been lost to the testament of time. But these play an important part of our history. Every time we have a new tour guiding madam who arrives on the staff, she's encouraged to make her very own look-alike rag doll. I'm sure now you can pick out which one's mine, folks. So of course you know that these are not the originals, but we actually do still have one of the original money holes. And that is located right over there in the corner of the floorboards. Keep your mind on the gutter, folks! Ah, dirty minds, a lot of you. If you see directly under the window, folks, there's a small plate with a hole stamped through it. Thank you, my Vanna there in the back. You can see that this is the original. And while it might seem awful tempting, please don't go sticking any cash down there now, all right? We actually no longer have the copper connecting us to downstairs. The reason is that when their current owner, her name is Madam Jan Rentmore, she's the same inspiring and courageous woman that bought this building back in 1978. When she purchased it, she requested for a kitchen to be put in downstairs. She wanted to revitalize a saloon to its former glory. But of course, before you can put a kitchen in a 120-year-old wooden historic building, it's usually requested that you remove the copper from beneath the kitchen. You can imagine that a small catch of grease going up a copper tubing with a lit flame. A very large grease fire hazard on our hands, folks. So to get at the actual copper tubing, she literally had to pry out each and every one of these original floorboards. She lifted them, preserved their history, but did remove all the copper from beneath. This is a pretty massive undertaking, as you can imagine. But it also turned out to be a massive blessing in disguise. For once the floorboards were lifted, it was discovered that there was items left behind by the working class women. 80 years prior, it's now well over 120 years old. And all those items are on display before you in this first glass case. You'll all have a chance to cast your eyes on them, I promise. I'm just going to point out two of my personal favorite artifacts. One is the lovely little silk bustle pad. Bustle pads. It's kind of like a pillow on ribbon. Girls would actually tuck them up underneath their skirts, giving them a little bit more, junk in the trunk here. Or for the younger generations, sweethearts, this is what you call an original 1898 Kardashian, okay? You'll also see in the corner, folks, another original, which is another personal favorite. In the corner here, it's an original 1898 electric curling iron. People don't always realize, but Skagway actually had electricity during the gold rush. We received it here in 1897, which for your point of reference is a handful of years prior to New York City receiving their rural electricity. So to use this kind of curling iron, you'll notice the main difference is at the very end, the plug. It doesn't really have the electrical prongs that you might be used to seeing. Instead, on the end, it's got a small little light bulb-like screw. So to use this kind of curling iron, the women would have to hop up on their beds. They would follow the original knob and tube wiring running along the ceiling down to the light bulb. Unscrew that little light bulb, screw end the curling iron, wait for it to heat up, and then curl their hair in the dark. They then have to unscrew the curling iron, hop back down, grab the light bulb again, hop back on top of the bed, and screw back in the light bulb. Honestly, ladies, it's a whole lot of screwing just to get your hair out, don't you think? Don't worry, though. These, of course, were working professionals. And, folks, you will also know this original knob and tube wiring that runs on the ceiling. It is still used to this day to light our brothel. It's a pretty illegal practice in lower 48, but welcome to Alaska, folks. Lay it fast and loose here. You'll also note in the secondary glass case, just beyond, there are a number of artifacts there, and actually throughout the museum. But these don't pertain to a brothel, nor to the gold rush, but they do pertain to this building. The Red Onion has served as a myriad of other establishments post-1900, when they served as a functional saloon and brothel for the 2 short years the gold rush ran through Skagway. Since then, we have been a post office, a pharmacy, a laundromat, a gift shop, a telegraph station, a television station, a radio station, and even briefly a World War II Army barracks. We're quite literally servicing them in a Skagway any and every way we can think of here, folks. You'll also know all around us that largest and intact artifact, and that is the wallpaper itself. The wallpaper plays a huge part of our history here. You recall that there was 10 brothels in town at the time. Well, to, of course, be competitive, you meant I had to have the best-looking women. To entice those women to come and work for them, madams would offer sometimes room, board, small little clothing stipends. To ensure that the Red Onion had the best possible offer, the madam would offer all these things, and a brand new, fresh coat of wallpaper in each and every one of the girls' crib rooms. All the wallpaper you will see throughout the museum was literally hand-selected by a woman that lived and worked here over 120 years ago. Folks, before you leave this first room, just note, whenever we leave a space in the brothel, unfortunately, we will not be returning back to it. Kind of a one-way street here. The next room that you're going to enter is called the wallpaper room. We'll see many more examples in there. Before you leave here, just take a mere moment, enjoy yourself, take a last-minute photograph of any one of these items. When you are ready for me, I'll be waiting for you just across the hallway here. Please note, please don't go walking down the middle of the hallway. We're keeping that area intact here. And don't take too terribly long. You've only paid for a quickie after all, folks. I'll see you real shortly through here, all right, folks?
Hard to pour through that glass. A different wallpaper. The girls chose.
Summer. Okay. So our season runs from April to October.
Lydia is here? I looked on the internet.
Yeah.
Lydia?
We'll talk about that. I promise. I'm gonna pick out what their favorite pattern of wallpaper is. It will help give an insight into the personality of these working class women. Truth be told, my favorite piece is here above my head. You can see all this beautiful pink pigmentation here. Folks in this room, just like the first, also feel free to cast your eyes to the ceiling. You'll again note the rows of nails. You recall there was 10 crib rooms in total that line the hallway. You're currently standing at about 2 1/4 of them here. When Jan bought this building, she actually removed the walls in order to create more space for a walkable museum. In doing so, she also discovered that there was up to 18 layers worth of wallpaper. in just one of the rooms. So for those of you doing a little mental math there, it's a very high turnover rate for just 2 short years. Now the main reason for that high turnover rate arrives because the women, just like the men, they use Skagway as the first stopping point up along the White Pass Trail. They were hopefully trying to get to Dawson City, get their hands on the gold claims. Would have lived and worked here for maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a month, hidden their valuables beneath floorboards, and then carried up along to Dawson, hoping to return with those riches in hand. But we also know there is a second and much less fortunate reason for that high turnover rate. That is obviously because this kind of trade does not come without its fair share of hardships. It does unfortunately include violence. Skagway was an incredibly violent town back in 1898. So unfortunately, many of these rooms, they would become vacant almost overnight. One layer of wallpaper up over the next. But we do believe that the very, very violent past is actually precisely what has led us to our haunted present. We actually have one working girl that still wanders our halls. She was a woman that lived here, she worked here, and unfortunately she also died here, which is why I think that she still sticks around with us here at the Red Onion. She is our resident ghost, and her name is Lydia. Lydia actually was one of our favorite girls to talk about here, namely because she's a frequented spirit. If you're very lucky, you might be able to catch her in a photograph. She often looks like a green or white floating orb. This area of the brothel that you're currently standing in, closer here folks, this was actually once known as Lydia's Crib Room, making it the most frequented area here. Many women on my tour have actually let me know that they have felt Lydia's presence, either in a gentle caress on their arm. I had a woman tell me she felt a small little kiss on her cheek. I myself was really not a big ghost enthusiast until I moved here to Skagway. The very first tour I ever gave, I stood here in Lydia's Crib Room. When I spoke about her, I distinctly remember the sensation of a hand on the back of my neck. Thankfully, she's a very kind spirit. We often have interactions with her, especially first thing in the morning. These women, they would work from 6 p.m. all the way to 6 a.m. 6 a.m. is right about the time that we open up this brothel, so we make sure every single morning that we always say good morning to Lydia and the other working girls that might still be here in the halls. Folks, if you have an interaction with Lydia, please let me know. I'm always fascinated to know how she kind of makes her presence known here on tour. You also know that as you pass through this area of the brothel, you'll be seeing a beautiful, gorgeous, very stunning dress here in this glass case. And it's really an original 1898 piece of lingerie. It's completely sheer, other than the small little silver-plated copper sequins that run the length of the gown. The whole thing is covered in small little silver-plated copper. It's been flattened, wrapped around the muslin, and then crushed into place. The whole thing weighs roughly about 15 pounds in total, which is why we have it lying on its backside here. We also know that this probably would have only been owned by a madam. It is a one-of-a-kind handmade piece, so only a madam really could have afforded this kind of finery. And that is because the madams, they worked as management. They procured the women to work underneath of them, and they took a whopping 50% cut of the $5 the girls made. With a bouncer put in place for protection, he would take an additional 25%, leaving just $1.25 a trick. I know it doesn't sound like a whole lot of cash. Just for your point of reference, $1 back in 1898, roughly equivalent about $35 by today's standards. And the cost of living in Skagway, well, that was a whopping $6 a day. If you were a single working class woman hoping to have a more respectable position, you could hope to be maybe a seamstress, a cook, maybe even a teacher. But you could only hope to make $3 a day in total. It's not enough to live off of, clearly. I think when I put those numbers side by side, $1.25 every 15 minutes, where the room and board is already provided for you, I think it starts to help people understand why so many of these incredibly courageous, hardworking women would choose this line of work. It's not really a first choice, but it was a means of survival. And survive, many of them did. Many of them would go on to thrive here in Dawson and, of course, in Skagway. Folks, for many of these courageous working women, they would go on to be the highest earners in the entire Klondike goldfields. They would far outmine the miners in question, folks. These women were sometimes the very first landowners here in Skagway. They were the longest consistent residents and definitely the highest earning. As you can imagine, it's a history that we are pretty proud to preserve here in Skagway. Folks, as you make your way through the next 2 rooms, they're actually so small we're not going to be able to fit all of us together. So I'm going to give you a quick visual aid of what to look out for. I'll let you pass through the rest of the museum on your own time. The next room you'll enter is the intact crib room. You'll get a sense of the size and the scale these women lived and worked out of. Please note the size of the bed in there. It's a very cramped 3/4 twin bed. Above it, there's a number of World War II pinups left over from those Union Army barracks boys. And on the farthest wall here, there's a gorgeous little framed silk stocking. Please do note the lovely little striped pattern going up its side. Indications it was owned by a lady of the evening. All they had to do was give gentlemen a flash of their ankle, on the street. This was indicating that they were open for business. So do be careful of those of you wearing stripes. You've been freely advertising, you didn't realize, sweetheart. And folks, once you waltz across the hallway, you'll be entering into quite a larger, more luxurious living space. And that is because it's for the resident madams. Most madams would take the 50% cut, stop at that. But not our own personal madam. The resident madam here at the Red Onion was a little bit different than most, not only because she would offer up her services, but she also stood at a whopping 6 foot tall. She was about 1.5 feet taller than the average person back in 1898. And she earned herself the name Miss Diamond Lil Davenport. She wasn't called Diamond for nothing, folks. She offered up her services for $100 an hour or $1,000 a night. And you had to provide her with 3 pieces of paperwork. The first was a clean bill of health. The second was a letter of recommendation. And the third, and arguably most important, was your current bank statement. I've actually implemented this in my own love life, and so far it's worked wonders, folks. At the very end of the museum, folks, that's where I'll be waiting for you. I'll be holding a photograph of Miss Diamond Lil if you'd like to see her. And if you've got any last-minute questions for me, do feel free to ask. I'm always happy to help answer them. And then for all the gentlemen here, on the way down the staircase, fellas, one final request. If you all wouldn't mind looking a little disheveled for me. A little worn out. You spent 20 minutes upstairs with Madame Trixie. I've got a reputation to uphold, after all. And ladies, you're actually more than welcome to look a little disheveled yourselves. They don't call me Madame Trixie Turner for nothing, folks. At the very end of the staircase, folks, that's where I'll be waiting for you. I would actually like to personally thank each and every one of you for choosing to come upstairs, learning a little bit more about these courageous whores of yore, if you will. It means quite a lot to us here at the Red Onion, namely because we are the only women's-led women's history tour in all of Southeast Alaska. So thank you, Guinness Chish, for coming upstairs, learning about these courageous working-class girls. And, as we've been saying here since 1898, thanks for coming. We'll see you at the very end, folks.
There's that lingerie she was talking about.
Handcrafted.
We've got satisfied customers coming downstairs.
Jesus, that's a small
Right? Imagine that. How can you sleep in that small bed, love?
It's the madam's room.
Nice to meet you.
I also do this
Great.
Awesome.
Oh, you guys started on Instagram. Cool. Great. Time here, and like this is the first time that I'm doing this tour, so it's amazing.
And fourth timers.
And everybody else uses some photographing stuff to will as well. Very reminiscent.
More crazy wallpaper.
Goddess of the gold rush, the queen of the closet. It's when she left the last she wore on her $35,000 in diamonds back in 15. An incredible hardworking woman here. David Choice, your sweetheart. You can leave it in the dresser drawers or in the treasure chest, whatever you prefer there, all right?
I'll let you put it in your dress.
No, no, no.
Oh, respectful. Dresser drawers then. Thank you, my sweethearts.
Thank you.
She only has euros. Oh, don't worry. That's okay. Don't worry. No, that's all right, honey. That's all right. I can't really use it.
I'm not gonna have it for like, no?
No worries. If you're interested, you can take a gift shop. You can leave a little something down there for Tracy. Perfect. Okay. The exchange rate's not good right now. Thank you, honey. I hope you enjoy yourselves.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, sweethearts. Oh, thank you, honey.